Hello and welcome, my name is Coach Pav and today I'm going to be giving you the quickest ways that you can see improvements in your cycling performance. So definitely not trying to promote instant gratification or the search of, but also I think that there's a few areas that most of my new clients or the clients that I start working with, that typically they see very quick gains. So I think that sharing this with you might spark some thought around this and how you can actually get some improvements yourself. So it's going to be a quick video, but the main topics are going to focus around a few areas, and we're going to start with your bike. Okay, so there are two things that typically people tend to neglect or not focus on when it comes to their bike. The first one is the most kind of obvious one, and that's your bike fit. I'm a massive fan of sending people to get bike fits on a yearly basis. Now, I'm not a bike fitter, and I don't really recommend anyone. If you want to reach out for a recommendation, if I've got one in your area, please feel free to get in touch. But I don't take any money from them. These are my, friends, colleagues that I've worked with for years, and happy to do them, a favour, and of course you as well. But mainly, the reason I recommend yearly is simply because you're going to adapt. Your body will adapt to this new position, and as we get older, our bodies are changing too. Unfortunately, in the most part. So seeing your fitter on a yearly basis is really important. Now, you might not need the full fit every year, and it's going to be kind of important to try and build a relationship with that fitter. Now, you should definitely be looking at making sure that if you have a major fit, for example, on a new bike, that you get a free or reduced price second consultation a month, 2 months down the road, because you're going to get adaptations to that fairly quickly. There's going to be things that is going to have a massive change in your geometry, which might present little niggles and pains and discomfort. Now, you want to be able to go back without having to pay the full price again. So if that's not on offer from your local bike fitter, I'd probably recommend going somewhere else. I also think it's super important to find someone that's really good at biomechanics. There are some amazing systems out there like Trek Precision Fit, Specialized, they've got one, there's Retool, there's loads of them. They can be all very good, but ultimately what we want to do is make sure that you are getting an individual treatment rather than you getting something that's pre-packaged as a generic thing for everybody. So make sure you ask the right questions of your bike fitter, because it's going to make a massive difference to how you feel on the bike and how you apply that power. Now, if you're the main thing is to not focus on being too aerodynamic. Now, this is a massive thing that a lot of newbie cyclists or cyclists who are, starting that journey in structured training or maybe racing try to do is they think that getting lower is going to be better for them to cheat the wind. Now, of course, aerodynamic drag or the wind resistance is the biggest resistance on you when you're riding. But when you get low and you're super low and tucked down, if you can't see the road, you're going to do one thing, and that's crank your neck right up. And now that acts almost like a sail, because you're so much worse off doing that than you are in a more better position. And that's not even to mention the fact that when you're in a very low, uncomfortable position, you're probably not that efficient or applying the power anyway. So don't be fooled into believing that going lower is faster. There's an optimum position, and working with that and having a bike fitter work with you on that over a longer period of time, especially as you adapt, maybe doing some core strength stuff as well, is going to be much better for you. Now, here's something we probably all should be doing. We know we should be doing this, but probably aren't, and that's bike maintenance. Now, I don't have those figures in front of me about how much a clean chain saves or how much more watts you get from a clean chain or a proper waxed or lube chain or this component or that component. I'm not interested in that. You can go find that on your own. But the bare minimum should be keeping that drive chain as clean, as efficient as possible. Now, of course, in training over the winter, it's going to get dirty. Maybe you've got a specific bike for bad conditions. That's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, when you're training, it doesn't make too much difference. But when you want to go out and you want to have a great event, a Gran Fondo sportive, a race in particular, you should be looking at getting every little minute gain percentage from every single part of your bike. And that just starts with simple bike maintenance, making sure that when your parts wear, you replace them. And then, if you've got some money and you're into all of that, have a look around, ask your riding buddies, see what other people are using, because there's some really cool components out there which are going to add watts and be lighter weight too. So of course, now I'm going to talk about focus, because one of the biggest things I see with a lot of my athletes, or generally in athletes or cycling, triathlon, whatever it is hyper focus on the small stuff. Now it's really important, and we know that marginal gains philosophy can really add up. But it doesn't help when you're so focused and stressed on certain areas that you neglect, the other part of it, especially if that stress is starting to accumulate and you're starting to get, bogged down in all of this. Where can I save some, watts? Where can I increase some watts? Where can I save some aerodynamic drag? What can I do? Where can I lose some weight and stuff like that? We all know, and we've all heard that the next fad supplement that's coming out, and we're all raving about it. Fundamentally, if you're somebody that kind of hyper focuses on this stuff, you just need to take a step back and ask yourself, is this what's helping me get going on the bike? Am I introducing too much stress for me? Or am I just distracted? Is this just a distraction technique to avoid, procrastinate away from the training or eating healthy? Ultimately, a lot of people can sit in there and they can not get obsessed, but if you're an obsessed person, you could be losing speed and power on the bike by just not actually focusing on what really matters. Of course, couldn't talk about an instant gains topic without mentioning weight, and there's two obvious massive ways in which you can save weight. Well, one massive, one minute perhaps, and that's obviously yourself and the bike. Now the bike, there is a diminished returns, of course, from mid-range to top end, and typically what we're seeing with the $10,000 bikes is bikes that are lighter than what the pros can use in the UCI Tour, and quite uncomfortable and difficult to ride over a long distance. Now that's not to say that if you have got the money that you don't spend it on that, but again, let's not focus too much on saving weight with bikes when potentially there's more weight that you can lose on your body. Now of course, when we're looking to lose weight, and I'll reference this in some of my other videos which I've done recently, we don't want to obsess. Too much stress in our body doesn't produce or allow our bodies to feel safe to lose that weight. So we tend to cannibalize muscle and hold on to fat when we're stressed for genetic reasons. Now we want to avoid that. So focusing on just eating healthy and de-stressing, relaxing is going to really help you in terms of actually improving on the bike, and it can be pretty quick how you actually will pick some of that up. So definitely don't over fixate on the weight. Don't be a weight weenie. If you've got the money and you've got the time, do what you want with it, but ultimately there's probably quicker ways in which you can see improvements. Now another way in which we tend to mess up, especially as we're starting structured training, is focusing more on a zone rather than a percentage of FTP, for example. Now zones are something that we've used for many years, mainly because of the fact that it would come from heart rate. Now heart rate's obviously very difficult to necessarily get a specific percentage of maybe your functional threshold heart rate or your max heart rate for so many reasons, including sleep, hydration, stress, caffeine and stuff like that. So a zone was always really useful for us to plan out with that, because you'd go out and you'd be able to keep your heart rate in a certain area, and as you go up and down hills or different terrain into winds and stuff, you would be able to keep it in that zone. Now we know that with a power meter, if you stick in a zone or you look at averages too much, especially over a long period of time, you're probably not actually training at the right specific intensity to get the adaptation that we want. So for example, if you want to do some training to improve your FTP, for example, you would look around that maybe FTP sweet spot area as the percentage you want to do. So maybe that's a 90, 95, 93%, and spend a lot of time in there with the adaptation being that your FTP would eventually improve. Now if you go out on a ride, of course, or if you're on Swift and you're not using like an ERG mode, or you're not following the actual workout, you might come back with an average which is exactly what you want. But if you've been doing a lot of hills, actually what you've probably been doing is spending too much time above FTP and the VO2 max or even higher zone, and then of course a lot of time in the lower zones, because when you're going downhill it's pretty difficult to keep on that power. Now what that does obviously is it's training you and it's giving you a different adaptation. On the face of it, it might not be a problem, and you might be recognizing right now that actually you feel like you've been doing a lot of training for one goal, you've not been seeing that, and this might be why, but also it's actually introducing quite a bit of extra fatigue. For example, if you're going out on a base ride and you're doing zone 2 and you want to just keep it nice and easy, do 4 or 5 hours or something like that to build your aerobic capacity, or your aerobic endurance rather, you want to keep that low. But ultimately, if you've got a lot of like going up and down, you might be pushing a little bit too hard, maybe into tempo or even threshold in some instances, with a lot of recovery time. Now, what this will do is likely introduce too much stress for you to recover from, thus affecting your next session. And of course, what we're talking about in terms of bigger picture cycling isn't the amount that you can do in one session. It's not even the amount that you can do in a week. Really, we're talking about a meso cycle of about 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks maximum, where you can build as much training stress as possible before relaxing your recovery week. So lastly, I'm just going to talk about where you get your advice from. And I'm going to try and do this without sounding biased. But we all go on a journey in evolution as cyclists. And when you're starting out and you're just getting into training and maybe in a structured manner, you're probably listening to riding buddies or competitors or people similar to you. Now, that advice is probably going to be reasonably good, hopefully reasonably good, but it's going to be anecdotal in the most part. And that's going to create an issue perhaps where it might not actually apply to you. So I'm going to suggest that the best place for you to go would be coaches. And I know that sounds really biased, but ultimately when you think about that, the advice that I or another coach is going to give you is based on the fact that ultimately one day, if it's not right now, you might start working with us. You're going to see that actually, yeah, it's probably good advice, because if I was to give you some sort of crap, you're not going to listen to me. You're definitely not going to pay me money. And that's it. So thank you for tuning in. This has been a great video. I've really enjoyed this. Hopefully you can take some of these points away, whether it's just cleaning your bike or getting a bike fit, and actually see some instant gains. If you have and you've done that, or you've got one that you think that actually I've missed, definitely let me know in the comments if you're on my YouTube channel. If you're on my blog, definitely share this with your friends. Hop over to YouTube, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. Everything is really appreciated. Again, my name is Coach Pav. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have an awesome day.